Ross Calvin was an author who focused on the beautiful landscapes of New Mexico, the way the weather floats across the state, and the unique citizens of our state. He was an Episcopalian priest who came to New Mexico in 1927, lived in Silver City, and wrote Sky Determines, which journalist Ernie Pyle called his Southwestern Bible. Our producer Sarah Gustavus recently sat down with biographer Ron Hamm, who also lives in Silver City, to discuss his new book, Ross Calvin, an interpreter of the American Southwest.
Ron Hamm, thanks for stopping by our studios here in Albuquerque.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Now, Calvin published the book Sky Determines nearly 80 years ago. What can we learn from his work today?
Well, I think we can learn a lot from it. I think the lessons are still relevant. I think they resonate. I think one of the chief lessons is that the sky does determine. We can have all the technology, all the meteorological tools you want, but sky determines. If I could just share one thing he said that I hope allows me to segue into that, and that was this, that he was talking about early people onward, right up until the present day, but he was saying that regardless of what we plant, what we eat, where we shelter, what we wear, what or whom we worship, sky determines. Water is everything. You either better be near it or it better fall from the sky. No proximity, disaster. Sky determines. And it still does today.
Absolutely.
Yes.
How did you first become interested in his work?
Well, I came here a long time ago as a bureau chief for one of the wire services, and I came from the east. And I looked around and I said, this is different. Indeed it was. And I came across the UNM edition of this book, and it had a windmill on the cover, a lovely windmill by some guy named Peter Hurd, of whom I had never heard, and I hadn't heard of Ross Calvin. And I started digging into the book, and I read it, and I reread it, and I reread it. And the more I read it, the more I could see that he had a message and the message was still current. It's current today. Sky determines. Rain is everything.
And Ross Calvin also came here from Illinois. What brought him to New Mexico?
His health. Actually, that's the short answer. He came by way of Pittsburgh and New York State. He was an ordained Episcopal priest, went to seminary in New York City and had a pastorate in Upper New York State. And he had a persistent sore throat. His father-in-law told me once, there's nothing more worthless than a preacher who can't preach. So he came west, and after a short period of time, the sore throat disappeared, only to be replaced by insomnia, for heaven's sakes.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
What do we know about how living in New Mexico changed him as a person?
In every possible way, I think New Mexico was his muse. I think the background, the total contrast from what he had seen. And the one thing I've skipped in this little narrative is that the common prescription of the day was to get out in the sunshine, get out in the fresh air. Lung problems, throat problems will all go away. And indeed they did. But when he regained his health, he looked about him and he saw elk and cacti and pinon pine and what have you, but he saw all these other things, and he saw that they were all in one way or the other connected to this arid environment in which he found himself. And he made the statement, which is one of my favorite little quotes, that in New Mexico, history doesn't take place under a roof. And it's a wonderful little quote.
I love that.
Yeah.
Ron, do you relate to his story as someone who came here from the East Coast as well?
I do. I think in a way I found my muse here. We were talking before we mic'd up about my little dog, Smokey, and my wife, of course, who's my muse. But I think the state did change me. I've been able to do some writing and some thinking, yes.
Now, we're talking about water and the importance of water, as you've already mentioned, so crucial for human life, but also for here in New Mexico, where there's some concern about scarcity and our future, our environmental future here in New Mexico. What lessons do you think we can learn from Ross Calvin that we can use today from what he observed decades ago?
Well, I think one would be conservation. Think about what you have, guard about what you have, conserve it, revere it, I think, all of those things, I think. Another thing that he said that, although not necessarily on the topic of water, but pretty doggone close, is he had this aversion to big cities. He thought we should never have one, and he was pretty right. Albuquerque's about as big as it gets for us. But he said something one time that crowding is bad for the body of man, it's bad for the spirit of man. And these were the kinds of thoughts that he had, that he shared with us. And in Sky Determined, Sky does determine.
But he did write about the people of New Mexico in his work. What were his observations at that time?
Well, in the second book he did, and we haven't talked about it, his second book was River of the Sun, which is about the Gila. And here again we can segue, because as you know and the viewers know, we're having this big issue about what do we do with the last undammed river in New Mexico. Well, the answer is we're going to do a diversion, at least it certainly looks that way. And he wrote about those people, the denizens of the bankside denizens, Kit Carson, Geronimo, cattlemen, Mormon farmers. They all in some way depended on the river for their spirit, in the case of the Apache, or for their living in the case of the cattlemen and the Mormon farmers.
What do you hope folks will get out of reading your book and kind of looking back at this historical perspective on New Mexico, the land, the people, the environment?
Well, I hope that, well, I don't know about my book. I hope my book does something for them, because my book is Ross Calvin, an interpreter of the American Southwest. I hope that they can come away from it, and from Calvin's books more importantly than my book, about this reverence for where we live. And we don't have to be maudlin about it. We don't have to be over sugary sweet about it, but just pay attention. Don't foul your own nest, you know.
That's incredible, Ron.
Yeah.
Any other observations, things that surprised you when you were doing your research?
Yes,
on him?
as a matter of fact, how relevant his thoughts were. I always start on a project like this by asking myself a number of questions, and some of the questions were, do his theories about weather still hold up? And I'm a writer, certainly not a weatherman or a scientist by any stretch of the imagination, so I went to weathermen in El Paso and Santa Teresa, and I asked those questions. And one thing that I learned is that in New Mexico we actually have 3 monsoons. I didn't know that. We have the one that we're going through or have gone through here in June, the wet one, which incidentally Calvin referred to as second springtimes, a lovely little phrase, the monsoon as second springtime. But there's also one in the winter, November, December, and it brings a little bit of snow. Then there's the other one that we went through a couple of months ago with all the dust and the gust and the blowing dust. So we actually have 3. And I also learned someplace along the way that I didn't know where monsoon came from, the term, but it's an Arabic term. And it just means seasonal wind. So that's one thing I learned.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That springtime wind, that's my least favorite season in New Mexico.
And mine, and most people's, I imagine, unless you're a kite flyer.
Ron, thank you so much for
You're
stopping
welcome.
by and chatting with us about the book.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.